Going to call to order the special meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 22nd, 6:30 p.m. Subject matter, starting off with A, hearing zoning ordinance amendment, section 6.13, medical marijuana facilities. This was recessed from May 25th, 2017. Mayor?
Good evening, Council. Certainly this is a topic that we've discussed many times, and I'm not going to rehash a lot of what we've talked about in the past. But I think all of you know my feelings towards marijuana. I've certainly been very open and vocal about that. If I had my way, we wouldn't be entertaining any facility. But things have changed, and certainly my feelings towards medical marijuana have changed as I've learned a little bit about the importance for those that are under treatment to have medical marijuana, have that ability, but also in terms of changes to the law. 3 years ago, it was approximately 3 years ago, we voted as a board not to ban any type of medical marijuana facility. I think that was the right decision at the time, and it's played out where we do not have a medical marijuana facility while other cities do. But as the law has evolved and the law has developed, I do not believe that a challenge to our ordinance would uphold scrutiny, and I do believe that we cannot, as a city, just outright ban a medical marijuana facility. Based upon research, legal advice, talking to a number of cities and towns, trying to gather as much information as we can on this topic, I believe the best route for us to take is to create a zone in the city where a facility could go if one was to come to the city of Peabody. Certainly I'm petrified of having a facility near a school, near a neighborhood, a park, a library. I don't think that's where a facility of this nature should go. I believe it should go in a certain location that's designated by the city after determination as to where it would fit best. After looking at the city long and hard, reviewing some different options, I did come to the decision to put forward as a proposal to create the medical marijuana zone on that space on Route 1. To me, it's the farthest point away from all neighborhoods, parks, schools, libraries, any type of neighborhood type of related activity, and it gives great access to those that would be going to this type of facility right on Route 1. Certainly we made the change. I reduced the size based on those discussions with the Linfield residents. I thought that was fair and the right thing to do once I realized the access point would go through their neighborhood, and I've made that change. So before you today is the creation of a medical marijuana zone for those 4 parcels that have been designated. It did go to the planning board. It was unanimously approved as from the planning board, and that would be moved forward as a report to the city council. To me, this is a decision we have to make as a city. I think it's the right decision. I think we've done the appropriate steps in terms of the moratorium, putting it towards a vote regarding recreational marijuana. But in terms of medical marijuana, I do think it's the appropriate step for us to take is to create this zone. I'm here today to ask any questions to the council, and as well as Attorney Mike Smirzinski is here as well.
Thank you, Mayor. At this point, with this public hearing, I'd like to ask anybody who'd like to speak in favor of the proposed amendment. Anyone like to speak in favor of the proposed amendment, please come to the microphone. Anyone like to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance? Anyone like to speak in opposition to the proposed ordinance, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. There being none, councilors. Council Manning.
Thank you. Through you to the mayor. We agree. I think the council has all agreed that we've all come around to understanding and the benefits to medicinal marijuana for those, that have Parkinson's and MS and things like that. That it's very helpful to them. I think we've all come around to that way of thinking. And I guess, and I do agree that we need to zone for it, but my concern about this area and is that it's right near the jug handle, and I started to drive by that area just to see if I thought that it was a good spot for it. And if you go by like on a Monday at 6 p.m., it's bumper to bumper, it's narrow there. And then even at noon on Sunday, it's narrow. So that's one concern I have, is that the best place for this type of activity? How much traffic and how many customers would it be? And I kind of just talked to some people in the business, and they thought a city of this size, you might get 5,000 people that would frequent that medicinal marijuana industry. And then if they have to get their prescriptions filled 4 times a month, I mean, that's just if it's medicinal. So how much traffic could that handle? Would it be safety concerns with the people coming in and out in that area? So that's one concern that I do have. And again, the recreational, I know there was some activity on the recreational law today at the State House, but again, my concern is if recreational, the ballot proposal that we put forward passes, meaning that Peabody residents choose to have recreational, then that medicinal shop will automatically be able to sell recreational as well. And how much more traffic is that going to put, and what strain would that put on that area? Because you go from, say, and again, I'm just spitballing with the 5,000 number if it was just medicinal, but if you open it up to anyone over 21 who wanted to buy recreational, then you're increasing that business and activity in that area that's already congested quite considerably. So that's a concern of mine. And so I just thought, again, I would have preferred if we waited to hear for the final word on the changes to the recreational before we zoned for medicinal, because I think we need to prepare for the worst but hope for the best, and I just don't feel that area is the best area for even medicinal, but certainly not for both. I just don't think it's a good spot for it. And then the other thing is, you know, we say that Route 1, it's the best place for it, it's the best place for it, we don't want it near this and we don't want it near that. But if it is for medicinal, and we embrace the concept of medicinal marijuana for all the good that it does, why are we hiding it out on Route 1 in that area where, you know, you know, we hear it a lot on the floor of the council, and sometimes I kind of go after a couple of councils in private, say, you know, let's put it on Route 1 or just stick it on Route 1. Hey, it's Route 1. I mean, I was at a zoning board, ZBA meeting this week, and a ZBA member was kind of using that mentality too. But so if that's what we want to do we want to put a medicinal marijuana facility where people with MS and Parkinson's and other health issues, is that if we really embrace the concept of medicinal marijuana is good, why are we subjecting that to put them out in Route 1? So I guess I just needed a little more time to find the right place for what we know we're implementing, and this just doesn't seem like the right spot for me in the city. I am not against medicinal marijuana. I am not against zoning for it. It's just not working for me at this time at that location. So those are my concerns and kind of my stance on the matter. Thank you very much.
Good. Could I respond to that?
Sure, Mr. Mayor.
And I think, Councilor, that your points, I think, kind of back up why I think this is the right location. If those are the type of numbers, and I haven't heard that large a number, quite frankly. I haven't heard it being 5,000, but it certainly would be a lot of people. But that's why I couldn't imagine that type of traffic coming downtown. I couldn't imagine that type of traffic going through our neighborhoods and streets. So to me, that type of traffic is going to result from a medical marijuana facility. That's where it should be, right on Route 1. I don't want to take a chance of it clogging up our streets that already have to deal with traffic issues. I couldn't imagine more cars coming down Lowell Street or Linfield Street or Washington Street. To me, that's the exact reason, the traffic that you outlined is the exact reason why I think that's the location. And it is visible, it's accessible to people rather than kind of trekking through. And, you know, I don't think it should go in Centennial Park. I don't think it should certainly go anywhere near downtown. I'd be curious to, you know, this has been going on for several months. I'd love to hear a spot that you think it should go. To me, this is the exact location it should, because again, for those reasons that I outlined, I think this is a very accessible site for people that do need that type of facility. But to keep the cars away from downtown, to keep the cars away from Centennial Park, and to keep the cars away from Linfield Street, that's exactly the reason why this is the right location to me.
If I may, and you mentioned the industrial park or Centennial Park. I thought that maybe we could discuss that area further, because I think we already have health. It might already be zoned for it. We do have health clinics up there, hospital kind of offsets up there, and I think there's actually a facility there where you can go and get your medicinal marijuana card. So I just thought that a discussion on the pros and cons of perhaps Centennial Park. It's well lit and it's easy access from the highway, so I don't know that everyone would be coming through downtown or Lynn or Linfield Street. There's other accesses for it. I know when we had folks wanted buses there, there was an argument made that it wouldn't cause traffic, but we decided we didn't want to choke things off with all the buses, so I understand. But that was just an idea, and again, I just thought a little more time for the recreational marijuana to really shake itself out so that we have all the facts before we move forward. And my fear is that it's kind of, I'm a little gun shy with it reminds me of the billboard thing. You know, it was like shooting fish in a barrel because there was a lot of money behind the billboards, and the amount of money that is going to be behind these medicinal marijuana or recreational marijuana, it really will dwarf the amount of money that billboards attracted people. So I was just looking for a little more time so that we could let the legislature work out the recreational, so it would have all the facts so that we could put it in the right place and do the right thing. So again, that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Turco.
Thank you, Mr. President. As far as Centennial Office Park, I agree that it is zoned medical. Your initial argument, through you to Councilor Manning, your initial argument of traffic, I think, would be horrific for South Peabody and Ward 1. I think that as well as many of you, have gone back and forth on whether this is the perfect location or not. I can't find any other locations. I don't believe that Centennial Park could handle that amount of traffic, and I don't believe that Linfield or Summit could handle that amount of traffic, so I would be adamantly opposed to that. Thank you.
Any other councilors? I'd just like to make one comment if no one has any other comments. There's been some reference to how many trips. There was an article in one of the local publications today where they actually viewed a medicinal marijuana facility up in the neighboring Danvers facility, and I'll just repeat what the number in the article said. It said 40 to 60 trips a day. I don't know if they're going low, I don't know if they're going high, but that was the number that was out there published today in an article in the newspaper. And with all due respect to my fellow Ward 1 councilor, I understand where you're coming from, although in the research I've done, it looks like there's just going to be one medicinal marijuana facility in the city of Peabody. I would have liked to maybe explore a little bit of Centennial Park, but that being said, doing my due diligence, I'm okay with it being on Ward 1. But as I said, I always do ask the fellow respect of my councilors that we don't use Route 1 as a dumping ground, that it is an area that is for business, and there are people who do abut it and do live on condominiums and houses and things of that nature. But I understand we've spent a lot of time, the council, and for that reason, I'm going to support a vote going forward, and soon enough you'll know where I vote. But that's my comments on it. Councilor McGinn?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move to close the public hearing.
You've heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed to vote? Any discussion on the motion? Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move to amend Section 6.13 of the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as advertised. So moved.
The motion was to adopt as amended, correct, Counsel McGinn?
Amend the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as advertised.
As that amended it?
Amend and adopt.
Well, it's adopt as amended and read only because the plan that was advertised, the site plan changed by reducing those 3 parcels. So I believe the motion would be to adopt as amended and read.
So moved.
Any questions on the motion? Roll call vote?
Councilors Manning Martin.
No.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-1, 1 absent.
Mr. President,
Counsel McGinn?
move for reconsideration in hopes that the same shall not prevail.
For the motion and discussion? Roll call?
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes?
Garabedian.
No.
Gravel.
No.
Turco.
No.
Gould.
No.
McGinn.
No.
Walsh.
No.
Mitsoulas.
No.
Charis.
No.
Sasslaw.
No.
Motion fails 9-1.
Moving forward, we're on item B, zoning ordinance amendment, section 9.2.1, central business parking requirements. This is continued from May 25th, 2017. Mr. Mayor? Clerk needs to read the notice on this one.
Notice is hereby given that the City Council of the City of Peabody will conduct a public hearing on Thursday evening, June 22nd, 2017, at 7:30 p.m. in the Franco Wigan Auditorium, City Hall, 24 Lowell Street, Peabody, Mass., in accordance with the provisions of Chapter 48, Section 5 of the Massachusetts General Laws, to consider amending the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as follows. Be it ordained by the City Council of the City of Peabody as follows. Section 1, that the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody entitled City of Peabody Zoning Ordinance, adopted April 28, 2011, and amended through December 8, 2016, is hereby further amended as follows. By deleting from Section 9.2, Schedule of Parking Regulations, the last sentence as follows. Quote, for all non-residential uses in the BC zoning district, parking spaces are not required. And by adding a new Section 9.2.1 entitled Central Business Parking Requirements as follows. A, for all non-residential uses in the BC zoning district, parking spaces are not required. B, for all residential uses in the BC zoning district, parking requirements will be as follows. 1, dwelling units established in newly constructed buildings and/or dwelling units established in space that expands the envelope of an existing building shall comply with the Schedule of Parking Regulations in Section 9.2. 2, for dwelling units established in rehabilitated buildings within the existing envelope of the building, parking requirements will be as follows. A, parking management and utilization of parking best practices is encouraged in order to 1, promote the most efficient use of available parking spaces, and 2, reduce the number of residential automobiles in the BC zoning district and thus the total amount of required parking spaces. A parking management plan shall be presented within the special permit application, and in addition to the site plan shall include the elements specified in the special permit application. Parking management plans approved by the special permit granting authority shall be revised annually and submitted to the building commissioner for review and approval to ensure such plan remains relevant and actively managed and enforced. B, the 200-foot distance set forth in Section 9.1.1 shall be relaxed to require only that the contiguous or nearby lot be located in the BC zoning district. C, if a contiguous or nearby lot is used for parking, the ownership of the lot must for all times be held by the same ownership as the lot on which the building is erected. If the building lot ownership is separated from the ownership of the building, the parking management plan must be revised, and such revised plan must be reviewed and approved by the special permit granting authority, and any such change lacking such approval shall be deemed a violation, and the building commissioner shall void the certificate of occupancy. This provision shall not apply to parking spaces utilized in municipal lots where parking may be made available under the provisions of the ordinances of the City of Peabody. D, each dwelling unit consisting of one or less bedrooms shall require a minimum of one parking space inclusive of visitor parking. E, each dwelling unit consisting of two bedrooms shall require a minimum of 1.5 parking spaces inclusive of visitor parking. F, each dwelling unit consisting of three or more bedrooms shall require a minimum of two parking spaces inclusive of visitor parking. G, if when adding the total number of parking spaces required, the resulting number of parking spaces includes a fraction of a parking space, this fraction shall be rounded up to the next whole number. Section 2, all ordinances or parts of ordinances inconsistent herewith are hereby repealed. Section 3 of this ordinance shall take effect as provided by law. Peabody City Council, Councilor Joel D. Sasslaw, City Council President.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, good evening, Council. Again, this is an issue that certainly we've discussed in the past, and I'll be brief and try not to rehash things we've already discussed. But as we all know, for decades, our downtown has really struggled to create an identity, and I think that's because of several impediments to progress in our downtown. Collectively, we have taken on the task of trying to revitalize our downtown, and I think we've taken some positive steps. And really what we've been able to do is eliminate some of the impediments that have blocked our path towards a very productive, active, exciting downtown. We've tackled our water issues. Now, certainly, we have not solved some of our water concerns, but without question, our water situation, our ability to hold water has improved, and the numbers certainly bear that out in terms of water incidents downtown. We've made the downtown safer for pedestrians by slowing down traffic. We've made it safer for motorists to maneuver around Peabody Square. We've definitely improved the visual appearance of downtown. We've created open space that I think was a detriment and impediment before. We really had no meeting place downtown. We've created that, and we've had some excellent events in our downtown that have brought hundreds of people that typically have not come downtown to see what we have going down there. We've made the area more handicap accessible, which has been extremely important for many businesses downtown. And also we've been able to secure some additional liquor licenses to bring some more restaurants to our downtown. What I think is our next impediment that we must attack has been parking. I want to thank Peabody Main Streets for their leadership and for their research and their work in this area. They've come forward with some recommendations. Excellent group of volunteers, city officials, business owners, property owners, interested parties that have come together with some recommendations for our downtown. I want to thank them. And based on those recommendations and also research that we've done as a city in speaking to investors, property owners, developers, people who are interested in our downtown as to how to improve what we're doing down there, there were a number of recommendations. So there are 3 proposals that have been brought forward for our downtown, for specifically our parking. The first one is to change our ordinance section 9.2 that currently requires 2.3 spaces per unit. I'd be asking for a 1-bedroom unit to have 1 parking space, for a 2-bedroom unit to have 1.25 parking spaces, and for a 3-bedroom unit to have 1.5 parking spaces. You have been providing information regarding other cities and towns. I believe that matches up with other cities and towns that have had successful and active downtowns. The second would be the creation of a parking management plan that would be part of any special permit application that would come forward to the City Council. And the third would to allow for overnight parking at municipal lots pursuant to a parking permit. That would just be for residential vehicles that would have to negotiate an agreement with the city that would allow overnight parking for residential units in the city. Looking at other cities and towns, I would propose a $50 fee per month per resident to utilize municipal lot spaces. Those are the proposals I'd be making forward today, Mr. President, and certainly here to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anyone from the public who'd like to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anybody who'd like to speak in favor of the proposed ordinance? Anyone from the public would like to speak against the proposed ordinance? Anyone from the general public would like to speak against the proposed ordinance? Being none, councilors. Councilor Manning Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and probably through you, probably to maybe Councilor McGinn, because I know that you have been involved in both of the parking planning proposals, and given the implementation, we've already gone through all this, I recognize that. So when this one is to be implemented, we recently revived the plan to increase the meter fees and the metering system and all that management from it was a year-old discussion, and you're reviving that. When do you think when is the plan to implement that change? And my concern now is they'll be implementing that change on top of this change may just be too much change and create too much confusion downtown with all these changes, but with using the public parking and reducing the number of parking spots per unit, and then on top of that increasing the fees and new meter system. I'm wondering if we're creating too much chaos if we do all this at once. So if you could just give me your thoughts on that.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Councilor Manning Martin. Actually, I think that the purpose of revising that was actually because I think those work well in combination. The changes that were proposed to the meters in large part will help make better use of the on-street parking that as well as the municipal lots, but the on-street parking, which I know it was an issue that you raised at the Industrial and Community Development meeting on April 27th, that we wouldn't have residents parking on the street and blocking access to those that wanted to park there to utilize the businesses. So I believe that the changes that are being worked on are actually synergistic, that they would work well in combination. So I don't think that it's too much all at once. I think it's a combination of these efforts is actually the formula that we're looking for. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to the mayor, the way I read this, am I correct in understanding that the changes for the parking requirements are only for rehabilitated buildings, not for new buildings? And if that's correct, why are we doing it that way? Because for instance, there's that parcel across from McDonald's next to Rosie's Bakery that would be new construction. So their requirements would be different from a building right down the street that would be rehabbed. So I'm curious as to why that is the case.
Councilor McGinn, I think you'd like to address that.
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. President. Good question. One of the very big changes here is that it allows the use of spots in municipal lots, and we've struggled with a lot of buildings that have had a hard time in attracting investment, and so this is partially a tool that can be used to attract investment and redevelopment of those particular buildings. In the example that you raised, 160 Main Street, that parcel is being developed in such a way that they are actually able to put all the parking on site. And so that's something that a redeveloped building doesn't have the opportunity to do. So when we first debated this, or I should say when we last debated it on April 27th, we identified a number of buildings that have no opportunity to do on-site parking. So the idea is to try first to utilize that very finite number of spots that we have, because we're not utilizing 100% of the spots in municipal lots. We're using some portion of those, and to try to use those strategically to incentivize investment in buildings that have had a very difficult time attracting investment historically. So that's the idea.
Mr. President, through you to Councilor McGinn, I guess the question would be then, Are we not trying to encourage new development? Say there's a parcel that is empty, that somebody wanted to develop. We're not really offering them an incentive to do that.
Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Councilor Walsh. This proposal is very specific to the BC, and there just are not that many lots that you described. That was part of the analysis that was reviewed. So there's actually a very limited number of parcels that would fall into the category that you're describing. So again, it's taking that limited number of spots we have today, trying to utilize them in such a way that we're not harming the businesses that depend on those spots as well, because remember, those businesses have a zero parking requirement, and so we made a commitment in the BC to provide that parking a long time ago when we established that as a zero parking requirement, and again use that strategically to attract investment in these properties so they can be redeveloped. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other councilors? Councilor Gravel.
Yes, thanks, Councilor Walsh, for bringing that up. I think there's been mixed opinion on that in terms of, should we or shouldn't we allow any new parcel in the BC. I, for one, believe that they should all fall under the same requirement, but, I guess most of the discussion evolves around fears that people have over what would happen if, and the result would be, that we'd have, this boom and create this super parking problem or something. I don't know. The more onerous thing in this, and I think it's, it's a first step to what I hope to be multiple steps to the future, is the no change in the envelope. No change in the envelope. So basically, if you've got a single-story building, you can't go up. If you've got and be eligible for that same parking, relaxation that's going on. If you've got a multi-story that is under the prescribed limit, you can't go up. You can't widen. You kind of have to keep in the envelope. And so, while I think this is a good step, it's certainly not the furthest step we could take, and in my opinion, is far from the riskiest step we could take. But, I think at some point in time, I guess if you got to crawl before you walk and walk before you run, after debating this for almost 2 years now, I just as soon see us at least crawl. Hopefully incent the people to come and redevelop what we have. Hopefully not see the fears that everybody will worry about be realized, and that we get, the end result, or at least a part of the end result, which is you get people starting to want to put their money in the downtown to redevelop it, to get the foot traffic that is the benefactor of the whole thing, which gets us the use of the commercial aspects of the property, which ultimately leads to some capability for transportation and additional parking, because I think today, if we had a parking garage down on Walnut Street, I don't think anybody would be arguing whether it's 1, 0, 1.5, because you'd have spaces. But with the limitations of the public spaces available, I think it's a valid concern. So I guess time is going to really tell. So with that's one of the only reasons I agreed to support it in its current form, because the form that I would have supported would have been far more aggressive than this. But I'd love to see some movement occur, and then have the evidence that allows us to have what we need, which is a dedicated parking facility like every other city has, a spur that works between us and Salem Station like all the other cities that are trying to revitalize have. You and I sat at the same meeting with the governor. It's a big emphasis on Hibbs Park to revitalize these downtowns. And, we've been sort of going at it with one hand tied behind our back the whole time. I sat in on all those meetings with those developers and people who have substantial funds to invest, and the first thing they say is, you got to do something with the parking. I've sat in on those discussions with other Main Streets groups, Beverly inclusive. You got to do something about your parking. So hopefully this, which was a giant leap for some, not as giant for others, I think will get us in that direction. So that's why I plan to support it, and I hope the other councils will as well.
Thank you, Councilor Revelle. Can a motion to Councilor McGinn?
Move to close the public hearing.
Heard the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? To vote? Councilor McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move to amend the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as read. So moved.
Adopt as advertised.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll retract that motion. Move to adopt as advertised the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as read. So moved.
Thank you. For the motion, any discussion? Roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
No?
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Mitsoulas.
Yes.
Charis.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 9-1, one absent.
Mr. President,
Councilor McGinn.
move for reconsideration in hopes the same shall not prevail.
For the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian. Gravel.
No.
Turco.
No.
Gould.
No.
McGinn.
No.
Walsh.
No.
Mitsoulas.
No.
Charis.
No.
Sasslaw.
No.
Motion fails 9-1.
Thank you, Council.
Item 6C. Excuse me. Item C, excuse me. Zoning ordinance amendment, section 6.14, temporary moratorium on the sale and distribution of recreational marijuana, referred from June 8, 2017. Public hearing was closed, and you do have on your desk, councilors, you have a late communication from the planning board with their recommendation.
Move to receive.
You've heard the motion. Move to receive. All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Any councilors like to be planning board on your desk? The bottom, I'm being told. Date was 6/15, top left-hand corner. That was the tally sheet, the voting of the planning board. That was a 9.
So they just approved it with no changes?
That's
No-
correct,
No
Counsel.
recommendation, no changes?
That's correct. Councilors, floor is open. Council McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would move to adopt the change to the zoning ordinance of the City of Peabody as advertised.
As advertised,
So
thank you.
moved.
Heard the motion. All in favor, any opposed? Shows me.
Roll call.
Close it.
Hearing's closed.
Okay, we closed it already. Okay, roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
Yes.
Garabedian.
Yes.
Gravel.
Yes.
Turco.
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
McGinn.
Yes.
Walsh. Mitsoulas. Okay, got it. Charis.
Yes.
Sasslaw.
Yes.
Motion carries 10-0.
Mr. President,
Council
move for reconsideration in hopes that the same shall not prevail.
For the motion, roll call vote.
Councilors Manning Martin.
No.
Garabedian.
No.
Gravel.
No.
Turco.
No.
Gould.
No.
McGinn.
No.
Walsh.
No.
Mitsoulas. Charis.
No.
Sasslaw.
No.
Motion fails. 10-0, one absent.
Can I have a motion to close this special meeting? You've heard the motion. We're going to have a very brief 5-minute recess, then we're going to get on to the regular agenda. Thank you.